Are you a little bit weird? Do you ever feel like sometimes you just don't fit in with the norm? Like, for me, sometimes when I think about it, I think maybe something's a little bit wrong with me and I just don't fit in with the rest of society. Like everybody's super cool and I've got this thing that makes me a little bit awkward or not right. And I'm just not like fitting in. Well, if you can relate to that, today's episode is going to help you understand how being a little bit weird is something to embrace. Our uniqueness, the things that make us a little bit awkward or different are the things that really make us us. And when we find confidence in that, we really own our good moods. Let's rock. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill, and I've spent the last 15 years mastering the art of lasting happiness. Look, happiness isn't just a feeling. It is a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn and master. This show is your training ground. Let your Good Mood Revolution begin now. So there are ever times that you don't feel like you fit in. Like, when I was a kid, I used to think that I wasn't like as cool or as normal as the other kids. And I had reasons for that. When I was 5, my parents got divorced. And I remember I was sitting at the kitchen table of my babysitter's house with my head down crying. And Kay, the sweetest woman ever, came up and put her hand on my back. And she said, "What's wrong, honey?" And I said, "I'm the only kid in school who's divorced." And of course, that wasn't true. But it's how sometimes we can feel about ourselves. Like our struggles make us uniquely wrong and invalid for some reason. And, this is the Good Mood Revolution. And one of the facts about being in a good mood is being so excited about who you are and celebrating your uniqueness and really just owning your confidence. And today's guest is one of the people that I think exemplifies self-confidence in a loving and just incredible way in the world. His name is Chris Welton. He's a professional speaker, a professional coach, and a best-selling author of the book, One Jordan. He also has a huge heart. He flew all the way out to Charleston to help me raise money for Make-A-Wish. And Chris, thank you so much for being here at Good Mood Revolution.
Thank you, Matt. It is my pleasure. And I absolutely had one of the best times of my life coming to the Make-A-Wish event. I mean, it was just unreal to see so many people with such big hearts. I mean, writing big, big checks. That to me, that was so impressive. Like I had no idea what they were going to do that day. And the impact, I think it was 93 wishes were granted, which was just like insane.
93 children.
Yeah.
Like every one child, that one child who spent 2 years in the hospital fighting for their life, that one child just had their wish come true. Like the phone call they were waiting on, and 93 of those children from that one night had their wish granted. Yeah. And, I started out, with my little story about how when I was a kid, I didn't feel like I fit in and I felt like the other kids were a little bit more normal than me, and I'd love for you to share your story because I think the person listening can relate to that all of us feel like there's something off or something weird or something not like we all don't fit in, in the norm of society. I think everybody feels that way to some extent.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for letting me share the story in the beginning. Too many times I'm on a show or a podcast and they want to know about my strategies and everything else. And I think it really needs to start with the reason why I implemented some of these things in my life. So I'm the son of a drug addict. My mom was a heroin addict. I was born with a limb difference because she took heroin when she was pregnant with me. I'm also a survivor of infant loss. I lost my infant son in 2020, CJ. And I share those 3 things with you because I want you to understand that I had to figure out a way to overcome that on my journey. And that's what I've done. And as far as feeling different, I always felt different when I was young. I mean, I have no left hand, half of a left arm. Like, if you see pictures of me when I'm a kid, Matt, I'm always the guy with somebody standing on my left, right? Because I didn't want anybody to see that. I thought people judged me and thought less of me because I was missing an arm. And I look at that now and I'm like, man, I wish I hadn't thought that way. But when you're young, the last thing you want to do is be different. But now I'm a 51-year-old man and being different is what you want to be. That's how I get to so many stages or have relationships. when I walk into a room, I mean, I'm 6'5", so that people kind of notice me anyways, but I have half of a left arm. I have the perfect conversation piece that goes with me all around the world, wherever I travel to.
Yeah. And that's celebrating your uniqueness. But I agree, as a kid, we just want to fit in. And there's a survival thing about this, that if we don't fit in, we could get cast out by the tribe. And I think that's it's such a strong tendency to want to be like everyone else, because we're truly feeling like we could die if we get rejected by the crowd. And it doesn't feel good to be rejected. It doesn't feel good to be laughed at or made fun of. So when was the shift? When did the shift happen from you're feeling, like, hey, I kind of want to hide who I am, to owning who you were?
Well, I think there was a couple different shifts. And the first one was when I was faking like I was okay with who I was. I became a jokester and a prankster in a teenage high school years. I'd make fun of my arm and I would joke about it and to try to break the ice. But deep down inside, I was not okay with it, right? I didn't have the confidence to ask out the girl. I didn't have the confidence to do certain things. So I felt like I didn't deserve that in my life. But what really happened later in life, and this wasn't too long ago, this was in my 40s, I realized through social media, really, because there's so many kids now on social media that have limb differences, and there's all these organizations, and I happen to belong to a couple, that Nub Athletics and the Lucky Finn Project. And I realized that I had a responsibility to show these kids that they can be successful later in life, even with a limb difference. And now, if you don't have a limb difference, you don't understand what I'm saying there, right? It's tough to understand that. But when you feel like you're such a recluse because you don't have a hand or a leg or whatever that may be, you need proof. I need proof that someone else has been successful, right? In not just sports, but everything.
Yeah, and I think this could go for really any type of difference. I love when somebody that says, "Hey, I want to succeed because I'm a woman, and I want to show other women that I can." This was my mom. My mom was the first female director of the Road Commission in Oakland County, and she took it as her responsibility to pave the way and break a glass ceiling for all other women. And of course, she was made this director in the 1990s. So not that long ago, but our world is evolving so fast. And I think that that having that, okay, I'm going to pave the way for somebody else to feel really comfortable with who they are. And we all have these things that make us feel a little bit weird or a little bit off, but we need to own them, right? So now you teach people about how to be comfortable with who they are and how to have an unstoppable mindset. And let's get into some of that. How do you teach the people that come to you for coaching how to feel super confident in who they are?
The first thing is that we need to, when I have a first conversation with somebody, I actually just had a call a few minutes ago with a potential new client. And we have to really unpack where they are currently, how they feel, and what their daily struggles might be. But for me, the way I've been able to overcome it on my side, and then I teach from what I've done. I'm actually one of those coaches who's actually done it and then teaches it, not talks about it, and maybe it works, right? I think there's too many 25-year-old life coaches on Facebook today. But for me, I figured out a strategy through learning and reading and just watching other individuals about creating my day winning from the start. And I start my day with gratitude right away, what I'm grateful for, just being able to put my feet on the floor. But then I have a strict routine that I follow every day. And it's 4 or 5 things depending on the day. And I'm able to what I call stack wins. So they're little things. They can be little things. They don't have to be these massive things. You don't have to do what I do. I go sit in 45-degree water for 6 minutes, right? So that's not for everybody. But what a win that is for me, because I don't want to do it. I don't like doing it. I don't enjoy it, but it gives me confidence. And then if I'm 4 or 5-0, I'm undefeated by breakfast. My first email I look at, inevitably, is usually something happened after hours, right? Something happened at one of my businesses. Something's going on. And if I wasn't prepared by stacking my wins and being mentally strong, it would affect the rest of my day. And I've been able to control my day and my mindset just by going undefeated in the morning. and then just taking on whatever comes at me throughout the day.
The wait is finally over. The Good Mood Revolution book is officially available for pre-order on Amazon today. You can go to Amazon and look for Good Mood Revolution book. And in this book, you're going to find the 8 bad moods that get in the way of your happiness. You're going to learn strategies on how to overcome each of these 8 negative thoughts. They're all lies anyway. And then what the thought patterns are that make us happy every single day. You're also going to learn strategies that can make you really feel fulfilled in your life and make other people around you feel fulfilled as well. So go on Amazon, look for Good Mood Revolution book, and order yours today. Let's talk about some of these wins. So starting with gratitude, do you mind just like taking me through what your morning looks like?
Yeah. Sure. Yep. So I start out with gratitude. And then I do some breathing exercises, right? And some say, well, that's not a win. Well, it's sticking to something that I don't have to do. Right. For me, it's like, it can be little things, but I have a breathing exercise that I do just to get ready to go. Then I cold plunge right away. Then from my cold plunge, I've got my journal and I journal. I do what's called my burn journal. Okay. So my burn is when my why and my purpose ignite. Okay. It's something that I go to regardless if I'm winning or losing. It keeps me in track. And my burn is my son, CJ. I have a tattoo on my arm. I don't know if you can see that or not. There you go. So it says CJ is watching. He's my son that passed away in 2020. And I write in my burn journal every morning, CJ is my burn, and I will make him proud every day. He's the person in my life that I know is watching me right now when my wife's at work and my other son's in the other room, right? I know I have to do well for him. So I finish that in my journal, and then I read 10 to 20 pages every morning.
Could we slow down? I want to unpack these because, hey, if you're listening to this, you are learning right now how to start your morning undefeated so that no matter what comes at you the rest of the day, you can have a positive, happy mindset. And this is the Good Mood Revolution. And it starts with great habits. So Chris said, first he starts with gratitude. What does that look like? Are you saying a prayer? Are you writing it down? What is this? I just want to unpack what it actually looks like for you to start with gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first thing I'm thankful for. And it's not like I'm sitting there going through my prayers like I would in the evening or throughout the day if I'm having some challenges and I want to connect with God. I'm grateful that my eyes opened. I'm grateful that my feet are on the floor. And having a son who's 4 months old, that happens a few times during the night because you know how that goes. But like this morning at 5:30 a.m., I told myself, I'm grateful that my feet are on the floor. I'm grateful that my eyes are open. I'm grateful that I was able to stand up and walk through the kitchen, right, from my bedroom. So just
not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody can walk to the kitchen.
Yeah. Not everybody has a nice, beautiful air conditioned home, right, that they woke up on.
For the fact that maybe we have our own bed and we're not sharing it with 10 other siblings, like that's something to be grateful for. I want to give a little practical tip on this because I also start my day with prayers of gratitude. It's how I programmed this, because I think you can have an intention. You could be listening to this show right now and saying, hey, I have an intention to start tomorrow like Chris and Matt do with prayers of gratitude. But then you could forget because life gets in the way. I just took a little piece of paper and I wrote the words, thank you. And then I taped it to the floor when my feet hit the ground.
Nice. Love
right
that.
next to my bed. It's just taped on the floor. It says thank you. It's there right now. It's been there for over a decade. Different sheets of paper, obviously. One will get wet or whatever. And I'll just replace it every time it gets torn up. But that way, when I'm getting up, my feet hit the ground and I see this sign that says thank you. And it's just a reminder for me to start saying thank you for everything in my life. So just a little practical tip to add some to that. So after that, you move to breathing. Who do you follow? Is this a Wim Hof? Is this some type of meditation?
I don't know the exact form of breathing it is. I learned it from a guy named Gary Brecka. You might know the version of it, but I do 10 deep breaths. I mean, all the way in, all the way out. And then I pause. And I do it for 3 rounds.
That's Wim Hof's teaching.
Yeah.
And it helps you get in that cold water.
Yes. No, well, that's the main reason it gets done is so I can get in the cold water. Right.
But there's a lot that happens with those deep breaths is that you oxygenate your body and your mind starts to work on a higher level and you actually feel amazing. Oxygen is one of the greatest feelings when we don't usually breathe that deep, especially, when we're sleeping, we're not breathing that deep.
Well, and when you get in that cold water, your mind, it's amazing how much clarity I have. It's like super espresso shot. You're just like ready to go when you get out of that water. But again, that's not for everybody.
Doesn't it hurt? Like you get in this water and it's 46 degrees and no, I know you don't want to get in. I don't want to get in. I don't get in. I don't cold plunge. I took a cold shower every day for 2 years and that was my cold plunge. It was before cold plunges were the thing. And I did it for mental toughness. But everyone that's cold plunging today is saying that it actually makes their brain work faster.
Yeah, I agree with that. It really gets me energized in the mornings and gets me on the right foot. And I come up with, I get out, I'm like, okay, I've got my notes ready to go next to where the cold plunge is. Cause I've always got some kind of new strategy when I get out, like something's like, let's go.
Now I want to, if you're listening to this and you don't feel like getting in 46 degree water, and I get it. I take hot showers now and I don't cold plunge because one day I was like, I looked at the shower and I was like, I feel like taking a warm shower today. I feel like being nice to myself. And I never went back. So if you're somebody that just wants to like treat yourself kindly, I totally get it. I'm on the same page as you, even though I have so many friends that love the benefits of cold plunge. One thing you could replace that with is making your bed.
Yeah.
I had a coach for many years, a Tony Robbins coach named Steve Gill. He did an episode with me about how to conquer fear. You should check that one out. It's awesome. Steve said he makes his bed every day, and that's part of winning. He said, when I make my bed, I don't just make it like with a bad attitude. I make it because it's a win for me. That like, hey, this is part of my winning morning. This is part of my winning strategy. As I make it, I'm saying, yes, right? Like that's another win. So you could replace cold plunge with making your bed, just saying.
My wife does that. That's how my wife wins in the morning. She makes the bed. But what I want to share with people is that I used to be so haphazardly when I got up. Like if I had to be at work at a certain time, I would give myself just enough time to get out of bed, just enough time to get in my car, and just enough time to get to my office. And I would underperform most of the morning. Like I didn't understand. And now when I have a grasp of, okay, when I get up and I hit the ground running and I win early, I get so much done before most people are even out of bed.
Well, and what we haven't talked about yet is it doesn't sound like you've checked your phone yet.
No.
How do you not look at your phone in the morning?
I don't check my phone or email until 9 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what about all the things that are going on in the news and your social media feed? You're so uninformed.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, it used to overtake me in the morning, right? And now I just don't. I mean, I've got my son in the morning. He's ready. My wife leaves to go 3 days a week to her office in the morning. So I have him until the nanny shows up. I spend time with him. I have an assistant that checks my email, right? If it's a 911, it'll be at the top of my inbox when I log in and check.
This is your strategy, and I do the same thing. We're teaching everyone listening. We're teaching the person listening that you can have that in the morning every single day. You can be present and connect. You can connect with God with this prayer of gratitude. You can connect with yourself with your routines. You can connect with great minds. Like you said, you read for 20 minutes every single day. I love reading every morning before I check my phone. I'm like connecting with somebody that's a genius in their area of genius and reading their thoughts in a very logical way to extract their knowledge. Like it took them probably 20 years to learn what they put in that book, and I get to learn it in 20 days.
Yeah.
Are you looking to take your happiness to another level? If you're looking to be more successful, we need to be happier because success and happiness go hand in hand. But sometimes we get stuck in thought patterns we don't even know are holding us back. And we need a coach or a mentor to see things we can't see with our own eyes. I've had coaches and mentors help me access levels of happiness I couldn't have achieved without them. I'm now offering that same service to a small, select number of people. If you think one-on-one coaching could elevate your happiness, go to mattoneil.com and click the coaching tab to learn more. I look forward to talking with you. So you read. What's next? What else do you do?
That's pretty much it. So, I work out 5 days a week. So usually it's after that I either have my trainer I work out with, or I take my bike for a bike ride or whatever it may be. So 5 days a week I work out when I'm done with that.
So exercise is the next win.
It is. Yeah. And that gives you even more mental clarity, right? And then I'm like, I'm a man on a mission at that point. Like, throw whatever you want at me. I'm ready to go.
So you had said a quote from Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind sharing that quote?
Yeah. So Deion Sanders says he never has a bad day in his life. He's never had a bad day. He's had a bad hour, maybe some bad minutes, but never a bad day. And it's your choice. It's your choice to have a bad day or not. And I think too many people get sucked in that negativity because it's so easy to stay there, and then it ruins a whole day. And that's just not how I'm programmed anymore. Just not going to live that way.
So I know you had talked about your first marriage. What led you to, a marriage that wasn't your ideal? And then what shifted for you to find the relationship that really works?
Great question. Because of being raised by a drug addict and having a limb difference, I was told I didn't deserve much, right? I was just, you get what you get, and stop dreaming, whoever it is you can find to get married is who you need to marry. Like, and I tried to save people. So I tried to save my ex-wife, and I was satisfied with being treated badly because that's the only way I knew how to be treated. And when we separated after we were together almost 17 years, I realized that I deserved more. And I literally sat down and wrote out everything I wanted in my next partner. In great detail. And I set myself up to go after somebody who I didn't think I would deserve. And now my wife is, every day I'm grateful. She's on a totally other level than me. It's just amazing that she's my partner. But I never thought that Chris Welton deserved that. I didn't. I thought I get what I get.
I read The Compound Effect from Darren Hardy before I met my wife, Katie. And he said two things that you have just hit on with your personal story. He said the first was, to find his dream woman, he needed to write out who she was in vivid detail. And he wrote out everything he wanted in the person that he wanted. And then he said the second thing he needed to ask himself was, am I the man that deserves that woman? And he said, when he looked at his list, he said, honestly, I don't believe I am the man that deserves this woman yet. And so what he did is he started to read books, and he started to study. Jim Rohn was the guy he studied, and he worked on his mindset, and he worked out, and he worked on his body, and he became the version of himself that he felt was worthy of the person that he wanted to be with. And then he said he met her, and he met her to like perfect detail. He said she would have curly hair and she would love to cook, and like very specific things. And every single thing on his list was the person that he met. I wrote out, after I read that, I wrote out a 2-sentence description of Katie, my wife. And I can't recall exactly what the 2 sentences were, but it was a proclamation that I was going to meet my dream woman, and that we were going to have a very deep and supreme love. And I wrote it down, and I put it in a book and didn't think about it again. And then 3 months later, I met Katie. From writing that, it was the first time I proclaimed I was going to meet my dream woman, and then it happened. And at the same time, I was working on myself the way that you've worked on yourself. I was doing the morning routine. I was reading. I was exercising. I was becoming the best version I could of myself to be the person worthy of that relationship. And I think this extends beyond just our marriage, like our friend group, our peer group. Am I the person worthy of the peers that I want to be associated with? What are your thoughts about that, Chris?
I agree 1,000%. I mean, first, my list was super descriptive to the T. I won't go into it on here, but it was exactly everything I thought that I deserved in life. And I met my wife about 6 months later. I went into a dermatologist's office to have some warts I got on my hand from the gym. And she was the one who came in and took them off my hand. And then that was 12 years ago. So
that's so romantic.
Yeah, I know, right? I told that story at our rehearsal dinner at our wedding, right? But what people I don't think they don't realize is that when you do the opposite of that, it does the same. Like, if I think everything's going to be bad, if I'm like, oh, here we go again, this is going to be more trouble. Like, we all know that one person in our family or friend group that always has bad luck, and they're always like, oh, not again. Well, it really talks. I mean, when you're manifesting bad luck all the time, you're not focused on the right things.
So you talk a lot about mindset. Can you go into so sometimes bad things do happen. You said yesterday you had a challenging day. How do you get yourself out of, so you start your morning with wins, you're undefeated to start the morning, and then you get some terrible news. This is called life, right? What do you do when you get terrible news?
If I notice it's taking me in the wrong direction, I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll shut my computer down and I'll go move my body. And yesterday I needed to do it. I got on my bike and I went for an 8-mile bike ride, and just to clear my head. And I put some, I go onto YouTube motivation and I put the earbuds in my ear, and I have these people screaming at me for 45 minutes about, getting over it. So that's how I shift it. But Tony Robbins teaches motion controls emotion, right? And if you move your body, it's hard to be in a negative or challenging state.
I do the same thing. I'll go for a walk. If I have some challenge, like really challenging news, I put my shoes on and I just go for a walk, and I do put in my AirPods as well. And I am listening to something that's positive and uplifting to change, to be moving my body to change my mind. Yeah, I want to end with something that you said before we got on the call. And that was that your go-to is prayer. Mm-hmm. Would you mind just talking about what prayer means to you and how you use it throughout your day?
Man, for me, surrendering and understanding that there's something bigger and more powerful than myself. And in my relationship with God, albeit was challenged when I lost my son. I had an 8-month battle where I didn't understand, and I struggled with that tremendously. But my relationship with God now is probably better than it's ever been. And I call on him regularly. And I'm very grateful that he's here to help me and guide me in the decisions that I'm making. And I believe he's always been here to help me and try to tell me which way to go. And I didn't listen for a very long time. And now I'm on that track of understanding that plays a key role in my life and my family, and has put me where I am right now to touch and impact more people's lives, and given me the confidence and the bravery to do that.
How did you come back to God after such a tragic loss? And what was the mindset there? Were you just like, man, God, you turned your back on me? Like, how did you let this tragedy happen?
Yeah. How do you take my son from me? And it was about 8 months after CJ had passed. I was sitting on my back lanai with my journal, and I was going through my journal, and I had written down all these things I was going to do with my son. He's my firstborn son. I have 2 daughters as well, but he was my firstborn son. And I'm reading through all these things. And all these just cool things I wanted to do. I want to take him to Fenway Park, right? Like all these just like really crazy, fun things we were going to do, father and son. And at the top of one of the pages, I had written down, call Bill Hart. When I was doing this at that time, I'd done that a year before, probably when I was writing this. And I never called Bill. Bill was my old coach through Building Champions and a personal friend of mine. I'm like, I need to call Coach. I need to call Bill. So it was a Sunday afternoon, and I called Bill, and he answered. And Bill and I had about a 45-minute conversation, and I told him everything was on my heart. And he led me back to understanding that I needed to get close with God again. And Bill started coaching me again the next week and got me back on the right path. I still have challenges. I'll have a challenge here July 2nd, 3rd. My son was born July 2nd, passed away July 3rd. That's a tough week for us every year. We disconnect. I don't have my phone for several days during that time period. We just disconnect during that time period, but he has blessed us with an amazing little boy. We have now Leo Christopher, and my wife almost didn't make it when we delivered December 12th. We had to take her in an ambulance to the hospital the day before we delivered my son. And I know that I know that God and my son CJ were part of protecting them. Because honestly, Matt, I thought I was going to lose both of them. And it was really touch and go for quite some time. My wife was in surgery for 5 hours after Leo was born. So it was an incredibly trying time, but I know that God helped us get through that part.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I was very touched by the note in your journal that had been pre-planted for future Chris Welton. Like going back to Tim Winter, Tim told me a tip that I've been executing every morning as part of my winning strategy. He said, track miracles. He said, if you want to increase your faith, track miracles. So I've got a place in my journal that says miracles. It just says miracles. And I handwrite it because there's no journal that tracks miracles, but there's a section, I cross out a section of the journal I use and I write miracles and I write, how did I see God move in my life this week? Well, you just proclaimed a miracle. You wrote call Bob Hart in the journal that you were going to be holding 8 months after the tragedy. And that was exactly the person that you needed to talk to at that time. Like if you need any more proof that God is here, like it's like you have the proof. And all of us do. If you're listening to this and maybe you've lost touch with your connection with your Creator, if you want proof that God exists, think back on your life. Start to connect the dots. Think about the most tragic times, and then think about how some of those things led you to exactly where you are, and how they were actually necessary struggles that you had to go through.
Yeah, and you have survived all the tragic things you've been through. Like people don't think about that enough. Like every massive thing I've been through in my life, I've survived for a reason. He's helped me get through it. You know, I mean, I very easily could have been, I was born, addicted to heroin. Like I very easily could have not made it. Right. Like, so those are just, you need to look back. You're right. Look back in time and realize where he's been there before for you. And he's going to be there in the future.
That's what I love, because the more my faith, the stronger my faith gets. Then when I get extremely challenging news or something really tragic happens or something that just kind of throws me sideways happens, I'm like, okay, well, God has always been there at every other tragedy, at every other challenge, and every other time. He always has guided me and helped me. So why would it not be so this time? It will be. He will be there, and of course I believe in eternity. You and I have a very similar story on our most recent born sons. The day that Brady was born, everything was going great. We were in the hospital, and like Katie and I, we have 3 kids, all 3 girls, and we were ready to have our 4th, and we'd never had any complications on delivery day, and I'm like, we're cracking jokes with the nurses, and all of a sudden a nurse like comes in and like starts adjusting the straps on Katie's stomach, and then she calls somebody, and then 2 more nurses come in, and then they're like moving Katie in all different positions and directions, and all of a sudden like 5 doctors show up in the room, and then somebody puts their hand on my shoulder and says, sit down for a minute. And she just puts her hand on my shoulder. And then the next thing I know, they unplug every single wire and they are sprinting down the hall. And a nurse looks me in the eye and says, your baby's not breathing. And we're rushing your wife to emergency surgery. She lost a tremendous amount of blood. All I did, she leaves me alone with a set of scrubs and says, put these on and you'll come into the operating room. And all I did at that moment was pray. And I prayed to every ancestor. I prayed to every guardian angel. I prayed to God. I said, whoever's here, like, save my baby, save my wife. And it was tough, man. I got into the operating room and they didn't even have time to numb Katie's stomach. They just used a knife and cut her. And when they pulled our son out, she's screaming, "Is my baby okay?" And nobody says a word. Room of 20 people, no cries, nobody answers. And she then just starts screaming that question, "Is my baby okay? Is my baby okay?" And they put the oxygen mask on his little face. He was white, just completely white. And like the cord had been impinged and he wasn't getting any oxygen. So he was, he wasn't breathing is what was going on. And then they pumped that little air and then he let out the faintest little cry. And the whole place freaking erupts. Like everybody starts screaming and hooting and hollering. It was like, and I just had tears streaming down my face and I dropped to my knees and I just thanked God. And I just said, thank you. Like that, this didn't have to happen this way. Like during those agonizing minutes between that time, I had just despair. Like, I don't know how I'm going to move past this. I don't know how I can recover. And you've been there and here you are. And you're preaching positivity and happiness and how to continue to live a great life after a really tough tragedy.
Yeah, you'll get through it. You will get through it. It's going to take time, but you'll get through it. And then I'm also part of this organization now called the Finley Project, not like the Lucky Finn Project. The Finley Project, they help mothers who lose their newborn children. And now we have a part of it. We're going to start helping fathers, because I went back to him and I said, hey, we really need to help dads. Like they helped my wife, but I didn't have any, like, there was no support group or anything. So we're in the process of doing that. I have an online summit coming June 11th through the 14th, which is totally free, no barrier of entry for everybody. And it's called Strength Through Adversity. You're Not Alone. And we're doing that in honor of my son, CJ. But I've got several of the top speakers in the world. They're going to come on there and talk about how they found strength through adversity. So that's all just part of what's transformed my life.
You're just doing God's work, man.
I appreciate that.
Your entire life is just a blessing to everyone who comes in contact with you.
Man, that's one of the nicest things anybody's ever said to me, Matt. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate who you are. And I know there's people listening today that are like, man, I got to have more Chris Welton in my life. How can people be part of your world?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me is chriswelton.live. That's my website. You can get to everywhere from there. My Instagram is One Hand at a Time. And my podcast is the One Hand at a Time show. But you can go to my website if you just want to have a 15-minute conversation and click the Calendly link, and Kay, my wonderful assistant, will put you in my calendar and we can have a conversation.
Awesome, man. Chris, thank you for your time. Thank you for your heart, brother. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's my pleasure.
Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.